Welcome to Gigantica. The slogan for this lake is Carp, only bigger, and that is exactly why we are here. There are some monstrous fish swimming around out there at the moment. The big one has been over 80 pounds. It's probably 75, 76 pounds. A fish called Fudgies, one I've been lucky enough to catch here a couple of years ago. So that one is not on my list. I'm going to leave that for Ali or for Neil that are fishing on opposite sides of the lake. But there are so many others that I'd love to catch in here. At the right time of year, there's 12 over 60 pound, there's 2 over 70 pound, and Fudgies goes over 80 pound. Plus there's a load of backup 50s, 40s and 30s. So you've got big long commons, short dumpy commons, loads of really scaly fish. They go up to nearly 50 pounds as well. And then there's some real brutes that are growing really quickly. So there's so much to catch. You never know what it's going to be when the bobbing goes. The tactics on this lake are different from where we've been fishing at Carp. It's a bit deeper, 22 to 25 foot. That means the fish can be off the bottom at certain times of the year, but now in the autumn, the fish are feeding and they're on the bottom. The other thing about out there is there's lots of weed on the bottom. So it's really important at the start of the session to cast around with just the lead on the end of the marker rod, feel it down, pull it back a little bit, wind it in, see what weed's on the end. But fortunately, I know there's a real hot spot out there. My good mate Damien fished this swim last week and he had 12 bites out of it. So I know that the area I'm fishing on produces fish. It's 28 rod lengths, so not quite as far as I fished in this swim in the past, but that is the spot that the bites are coming from, so I'd be mad not to start fishing there. So what I've done last night is just unloop the lead, put the marker float system on, just like I showed you at Carp, put that out in the middle of the swim, and I've jumped into Kimberly there. She's my boat for the week, and I've rowed out and put about 4 key of boilie all round the back of the float. So none of the bait is my side of it, so when the fish are feeding, they're not coming into contact with the line. I put a few tiger nuts out there as well, and the fish are now showing over me. But this is a tactical game of chess. A week's fishing on here, you might get 3 or 4 days where nothing happens at all, and you have to condition your mind into that happening. You have to be really aware of when the fish are showing, when you should be baiting up, when you shouldn't. If I went out in the boat now, I'd absolutely ruin today because the fish are just beyond the area showing. I want to let them come in and hopefully I'll get a bite. So what I'm going to do now is pass you over to Ali. He's fishing a fantastic swim called Alcatraz. I'm sure he's buzzing as well, and he'll tell you why he's fishing it.
Sorted. A rod back out, just a recast. There's fish definitely in the area between me and Dan. I'm in a swim called Alcatraz, and the anticipation has been building towards this session for weeks. And the last few nights it's been a case of no sleeping at all, because it's the thought of coming here and the big fish that this lake has that just it gives me a feeling that no other lake does. Been lucky to catch my, as I joke about it, global PB from this place, a fish called single scale, 70 pounds, 8 ounces. We've seen Dan catch numerous big ones from here. I've come into a swim called Alcatraz that Tom Dove was on a week's holiday prior to me, and he caught a fish called the Target over 60 pounds. So it has big fish form, and that pursuit of the monster will hopefully be going on in this swim. When I got here, I got a lead out there because Tom was fishing at about 110 yards, 112 yards. He was lucky to have about 7 fish, I believe, or 8 fish. So I wanted to go a little bit longer than him. He did say it was weedier, so what I've actually done is I've probed around just with a bare lead on the marker rod, and I found an area which is big in places that's clear. You could pull back for a rod length, it'll be clear, then recast again, there'll be odd patches of weed. So I've decided to fish chods on the line, a method that not many people have ever used on here. Last year when I was here, I actually caught the last fish of the trip on a choddy on the line because I wanted to try it here. You know, they said pop-ups don't work, so I thought, you know what, it hasn't fished too well this week. Last day of the session, I'm going to put choddies on the line on all 3 rods. They went out and I got a bite just as quick as I had when fish had been on me on previous days. So I'm really confident trying that, and I think it's the right presentation for the situation. I wouldn't be confident casting a bottom bait out there because you can't really feel the drop that easily at that range. And you know, it's about being composed and confident on sessions like this, knowing that your hook baits are sitting proud of the weed and that the fish can get them in their mouths, because I don't want to leave anything to chance. There's big fish out there, I want to catch them, and when that first bite goes, when that bobbin rattles to the top, the excitement and the pressure just sort of lifts off the shoulders, and I'm going to go and sit in the bivvy, and hopefully that moment won't be too far in coming. My bivvy of choice is a Cayman Pro from Tracker. It's the one I've decided to use, but you'll notice it's sort of quite well pushed back and to the left of my swim. That gives me sort of ample room for everything else, which we'll talk about in a bit. But the bivvy itself, I've got to admit, I love it. I'm a Tempest fanatic, but if you haven't got Tempest money and you want to, you know, an alternative to consider, then this 2-spoke pram hood system is really, really worth considering. Now, they've added some nice features to it. It's now available in this wonderful Aquatex material, which means water just drips off it. It's almost like it's got a wax on it. Then onto the actual spokes themselves, you know, they're anodised in black now, so for the tackle tarts there, they've just been given that little edge, and they've also got a chain running through them now. Instead of, you know, the old elastic that used to break and then the poles would sort of be separated and you'd have to just piece them together, that won't happen anymore. So nice features, tension in bars, and that's what I've noticed with this. Last night, I didn't have the addition of this winter skin, which we're going to talk about. I just used it naturally, and it was just set up beautifully. It had so much tension in it, it was really easy to use. But I've got to admit, I haven't used winter skins that much, but I really wanted to get onto this. So really easy to put on, just over the back, pull to the front, pegged in the back, and then just pegged all the way around. And what this does is give you an additional cavity, really. You've got a gap between the bivvy skin and the winter skin, so you can slot some things in there if you want. But the important element is the fact that it does keep condensation away. So whether it's a summer's, you know, a wet summer's day or a winter's day, it just gives you that sort of more consistent warmth, if you like, a nice temperature, rather than, you know, waking up and having water droplets on your face. It just gives you that added security and improved space, and I do love that. And I think for a longer session, the winter skin is a lovely addition. You've even got the rod straps over it, even though that's on the bivvy as well. But sometimes you get a winter skin and they haven't got them on there, and you'll notice I'm utilising them here. A couple of Infinity DFs at the ready to rumble. So onto the rods themselves, perfect timing. Have a look at that. The bank stick setup is all towards the left of the swim, okay? That's because when I'm fishing in excess of 100 yards, I want to be able to step into my cast. I'm a little guy and I have to sort of move in, and the last thing I want is to be worried about smashing into my other rods or knocking them out of the way. This way I've got ample room. I can swing the rods back either way because the bivvy's set back far enough, and I can step into the cast, not worry about anything in the way. And it's just, you know, thinking about everything in your swim, giving a position for landing fish, launching the boat. These are all important factors on a longer session, and the marker rods are over my left shoulder there. So simple factors that make a big difference, and that hopefully is where the magic's going to happen.
Well, apparently Gigantica doesn't fish in the rain, and just at the right moment it's roared off. We're just commenting how lovely it looked with all the rain hanging on the line, and away it goes. I put another 4 key of boilie out in the boat last night, and just half a key of tiger nuts spread all over the area. Come on, fella, in you get, in you get. Bosh, get in my nets. Wicked, excellent. Crazy looking creature this one, named Quasimodo for obvious reasons. 35.5 pounds, well chuffed to get this. And this was taken on my homemade IQD rig, £20 IQ2 and a size 2 curve shank, made barbless, along with my favourite cog system. So we're going to get him back, and it's looking wicked for more bites. We've left Quasimodo in the sling just for sort of half an hour to recover, done the old bucket trick on it, just giving it a nice oxygen bath, and it went off really strong. And look what it has revealed in the sling. This is so interesting. Look at that. Now that is all tiger nut in there, and all I've put out is half a kilo of tigers over the baited area, and there's no boilie in this whatsoever. And that's a great tip. By feeding boilie and tigers, they're two completely different kinds of food, This fish has preferred the tigers. Still got a bite on a boilie, high attract hook bait has still worked, but that's what this fish has been eating. Now, if I'd only put boilies out, it may not have attracted this fish into the swim. So it's a really good tip. Tigers are not really taken by the bream or anything else, and just a handful. You don't need to put loads in, but just a handful can get the fish grubbing around, and that is proof of the pudding.
Well, the heavens have opened up on Gigantica this morning, but with them have come the carp gods. And I got my first bite in the net, a lovely, what looks like a 30-pounder, but at the same time I had a bite on another rod. So that looks like an even bigger one, possibly 50, not too sure, but it's a weight off my shoulders. I got a bite yesterday, lost it due to a hook pull, but I knew the methods were working then, and the double take this morning just, you know, made me feel so good. You know, I know everything's spot on and working, and that's all you need to know on a long session. So gonna get this one out, get her weighed up and have a few pictures, and then get on to the bigger one. Well, here we are. Fish number one, 38 pounds. Absolute beautiful carp. Let's get it nice and stable so you can have a good look at it. How about that? What a stunning, stunning creature. Long and lean. Absolute creature, this one. Beauty. And there's so many of them that look like this in Gigantica. This is an absolute pearler. I'm going to get it back and get onto that bigger one. Well, there we go, we've just weighed it. A very lively 54.5 pound. Here we go. Oh, it's heavy. Gonna need to get me legs up, and I'm gonna hold it in like that, nice and close to the body. And how about that for an awesome, awesome Gigantica mirror carp? Almost a lever, if it weren't for those scales at the top. But I'm absolutely made up. Only a short while into the trip and already been blessed by one of these stunners. What an amazing carp and what an amazing place. Superb.
Well, after an epic battle in the rain, the sun has come out, so I can show you the prize. 34 pounds this one, look at that. Proper wood carving of a carp. And this came on the outside rod again. All my bites have been coming on the outside rods, nothing on the middle rod at all, and that suggests that the high attract hook baits I'm using on that cog system are nailing them really quickly. As a group of fish come in, I'm nailing one, it's spooking them back out again, and it's taking a while for them to come back. So I reckon there's still quite a lot of bait left in the swim. So it can be a good indication of what's going on out on the bottom of the lake.
Oh my God, this place makes me so nervous when you play fish, especially when you think they're big uns. So hard to tell from a range. It's not even funny, it's not like I even enjoy the fight. I don't. I absolutely despise the fight, because it's a case of what is on the end. Well, I just got it in, it felt like a good fish, so it's just weeded me up right in close. Am I going to get a bowler weed or a carp? Come on. It's fought like a dog the whole way in, just a slow. Do you think that's the snake there? No, it's coming up, geese. Just slow her that, back her up. Off! No! Just as it was coming up. I'd like to borrow that strimmer that's going off in the background and just mow my own head off at the moment. That felt like a really big fish. You know on here when they're big because they come in on a straight line, just dogged, don't really do a lot. And it felt big from the minute I hooked it. And A lot of them feel big, but I've had enough practice on here now to know when you've hooked something in the 50 plus bracket, and that felt like a good fish. And just got it out of the weed. It was just coming straight up. I was just pumping it up from the depths. I reckon it was probably 4 foot from the surface, wasn't it, when that came up?
Swirling.
And bang, it just popped straight out. It's just bad luck. The hook points bird over now. Just well hooked and just been in the weed, and obviously the hook's worked its way free. It's barbless hooks. That's what you get sometimes. Painful, painful, very painful indeed. So close. That was just a dead weight, just lifting up a dead weight of a few little knocks of its head, and you know they're big uns. You just know it. The one that got away.
Well, I've just been watching through the binos, and Ali's just lost one pretty close in. He must be absolutely gutted. I feel for him. I know what it's like. I've lost a couple already myself. And when they're so big in here, everyone you lose, you think it's the monster. So I sympathise with him. But on a plus point, it is looking fantastic in my swim. There are fish showing out there at the moment, just beyond the spots. And I'm predicting the right-hand rod is going to be the one that goes. So it's now 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If it hasn't gone by 2:30, I'm going to throw and stick a little bit more bait out there because I've had 2 bites today already. But it is proper exciting. When they're on you and you think you're going to get one, it's the best place in the world. Perfect. Well, it's been a few hours since my last bite, and as they say, greed is good. Kingfisher going through there, that's a very good omen. I'm going to put a little bit more bait out. It's middle of the afternoon, nothing's happened for a few hours. The evening's a really good time in this swim. I've just put the Skywinder out there, just with a few tiger nuts in it. The nose cone of that is my marker for the boilies, so nothing's falling into the swim, no marker float or anything like that. I'm just going to spray probably 100 boilies over the area, and hopefully the sound is going to bring the fish back in. Oh, split the baits there. Just have to wet the stick a little bit. And this is a way to kick-start the swim. Rather than a big bait in, this is a way to kick-start it without putting anything on the bottom. No more line on the bottom of the lake, no more leads, anything like that, just a bit more bait.
With the build-up of silkweed out there, it's very patchy, and because I wanted to go out further than where Tom was the week previous, the spots out there just wasn't big clear areas. And you know, if I was in England, the obvious setup would either be a solid bag or the chod system. So I had, you know, no hesitation really. It was the right thing to do, and I'm glad that it's done me 4 bites so far in probably about 36 hours of fishing. So, you know, you can't argue with that. The first bit is the no trace system, because I'm fishing it naked chod style. This is the brainchild of our product development wizard, young Tom Dove. It's just a nice little bead that will fall off there. Obviously, you don't want to be leaving any sort of tether rigs out there. And the great thing about this is that that bead will fall off the line, and the ring swivel on the chod can just pass over that with consummate ease. So I'll just pull that back over. This is how I like to use it. Probably about 1.5 inches in height, and you'll notice these are the main differences. The crimp to form the loop. Okay, I actually like the movement either way, and the other difference is that instead of just the rig ring, I've got a little micro ring swivel on the D. Again, I just think that gives it total movement and flexibility. You know, these big fish are coming down, and I want it to be able to twist and catch them wherever. Moving down, you've then got the other bead that comes with the no trace system that just sits there. But this is the interesting part, because I'm fishing at range. I'm having to use a bigger lead. This is a 4.5 ounce tournament lead. Now you wouldn't want this tied on or fixed to the line the whole way through, because it's a barbless only rule at Gigantica, and the last thing you want is to be playing a fish with a 4 ounce lead shaking around right by a barbless hook, you know, 1 inch or 2 away from its mouth. At the end of the line I have a size 8 ring swivel. The ring is actually facing down towards the lead. And what I've done there is tied a small piece of armour cord, formed a loop in it, and all I'm doing is taking that loop twice through the stainless ring on the lead, which I've actually taken the swivel off that, just twice through there, and then with a boiling needle I'm pulling that loop through the side of the heli sleeve and just sandwiching in a bit of dissolving foam and cutting that down to size to sort of aid the aerodynamics of the whole setup. And that seems to work an absolute treat. I've checked it in my hands, I've shaken the lead off, and it takes the force of the cast and the winding in. But should you hook a fish out on the weedy bottom, that comes straight off. With the naked chod, I like it to sink really, really slowly. So just around the actual crimp, I'm adding just enough putty to sink that down, and really, really slowly. And one final point to add, inside this goo-infused hook bait, this is actually a high impact banoffee pop-up. And what I've actually done is I've used our little drill, and I've just put in a little bit of the cork that comes in it, in that kit, and I've just pushed it in. Probably about 4 mil of cork has been shoved into that pop-up just to make it more buoyant over a longer session. You know, the rigs could be out there at times for 24 hours. I want to make sure that's going out there and sitting as erect and as high as it did when it first went out. And that's really important. And one final chat on the hook bait, you know. I know a lot of people had sort of been talking before this trip that maybe they were liking washed out baits or white ones, but I'd really worked on these particular hook baits before I'd come out. I'd thought about the fishing Gigantica, what they like, that they do love a sweetie. It's a fusion of different goos, some new that aren't out yet. They might not even come out. This is a part of the testing process that we all go through before things are developed, working for Korda or using baits from Mainline or anyone. It's a garlic one, it's another fruity one. And then talking about some of the current ones, the caramel as well, and they've been fused into that over a good few weeks, so that's really taking it on, and bit by bit that sort of goes away, but that's the sort of colour you're ending up with on the bottom. Not too bright and not too subtle, and that the fusion of the goo will just release a nice little vapour, and I think so far so good. It's working. Hopefully it'll continue to work, but that's the setup, and let's hope a monster ain't too far in coming.
Well, good morning. Welcome to a very beautiful Gigantica morning. A fish has just showed out over the area just as I was looking out there, so it could go at any minute. It's been a very eventful night. Started off bad, 1 o'clock in the morning, rip-roaring take. I hadn't tightened the clutch up enough. I tightened them up pretty tight, but this was just taking too much line. I was scrambling to get my glasses on and my shoes on, and it actually cut me off on the bite. So I had to re-spool the whole thing, get the rig back out there, but it did go out lovely. And then about 6:45 this morning, just as it was getting light, I had a take on the left-hand rod. It was screwed up tight so it couldn't go anywhere. Run out of my socks, no glasses on, and managed to land it. So I've got a lovely 37-pounder in the bag there to show you. And basically this is the reason we do it. You know, the mist rolling off the water, sun's just coming up, fish showing in the area. This is why we go carp fishing. Check that out. There are not many places in France when you can catch carp like this, a proper wood carving. The slogan is carp only bigger, but this one is carp only prettier. Wicked. Check this one out, 33 pounds on the button, proper fully scaled, proper bar of gold. And I know I said to you that I was going to go out in the boat and put some more bait out, but we've had a change of tactics. Ali's seen a really big fish show over my area. He's looking exactly where my leads are landing, and he's seen one head and shoulder. So going out in the boat when there's feeding fish out there will be the absolute kiss of death. So I'm just going to leave 2 rods fishing. The one I caught this fish on is up against the Bivvy, waiting to be cast out, but I'm going to give it a couple of hours with no commotion in the swim at all and see if I can get another bite while there's fish out there feeding. It's something you can put into your own fishing. If they're showing over your area, the last thing you want to do is cause loads of commotion. So no spodding, no throwing stick, no boat. Just sit on your hands and wait for another rod to go. The session continues. A fish called the Sergeant, 39 pounds 12 ounces on account of those 3 scales on the wrist of his tail there. And this one came on the middle rod, the first bite on the middle rod. So they're obviously getting on the bait. You'll probably know that I'm a massive fan of stiff rigs when I'm fishing over boilies, and this situation is no exception. On here we've got a length of 20 pound IQ2, which is a fairly stiff material. It's fluorocarbon, so it's harder for the fish to see, but that's not really why I'm using it. I'm using it for the stiffness. I've tied it myself with a size 2 curve shank. That may sound like a really big hook to you, but we're fishing for 70 pound fish in here, and when I construct a rig, it's always constructed to land the biggest fish in the lake that I'm fishing. There's no point hooking a really big fish on light tackle and then losing it. It'd just be soul destroying. So I've done my favourite whipping knot at the top of the hook, and basically cut off a long length, threaded on a micro rig swivel, and then done the knotless knot. Very, very simplistic. You've seen me tie this at Sandhurst as well. And then we've probably got, I would say, 8 inches of hook length, something like that. And because of the stiffness of it and having that little tiny sinker in the middle, it will sit away from the lead as it hits the bottom. So I'm not using foam in this situation. I want to be as accurate as I can with the casting. So I'm just tying the bait up with a bit of PVA tape to stop it flaying around on the cast. I have sometimes wound it in with the hook actually embedded into the bait where it's flown around on the cast. So to stop that happening, a little bit of the PVA tape just cures that. And that's going to sit out nice and straight and will be in contact with the lead really quickly. And that's the thing I like about this rig. It's very stiff, it's very springy, and as soon as it goes in their mouth, they're feeling the weight of the lead. And that is exaggerated massively by that fella there. That's called a cog lead, which stands for centre of gravity. If you can see there, I'm picking the lead up from the very centre of the lead. Now you would have seen this on some of our other films a couple of years ago. We've been mucking around with it for quite a long time, and we've come up, if I pull this out, with that little fella there. So you've got a swivel basically with a peg moulded around it, and that gives you 2 options. You can fish with it as a hinge, so if I hold that, you can fish with it as a hinge like that. Yeah, and there's another version where you can fish with it fixed, which I'll show you in a minute. But that basically pushes back into the side of the lead like that, and that forms your lead system. And then when the fish picks up the bait, what basically happens, that'll come off like that, and if I keep shaking the lead comes off as well. So it turns into a normal lead clip system, and you can see on this one it's actually attached to a hybrid lead clip. So there's going to be a couple of options with these. One is attached to a hybrid lead clip, and then the other one is just for a normal lead clip. So your bit of tubing and rubber will just push on the back. If I can put that lead back on again. It's exactly the same as fishing a normal lead clip. So I'm just wetting that, pushing it back over the end. Doesn't need to go on very far because the cog system is taking the force of the cast. That pushes back into there like that, and that is the system ready to go. And with a stiff link like that and the thick tubing I've got on the end there, that's the dark matter tubing, it hardly ever tangles. I still watch it in the air to make sure it's okay, but I'm more than happy to cast this at night and know that it's sitting perfectly on the bottom, and it's been really successful for me here and loads of other places all around Europe. And then the second option, almost exactly the same. So lead is set up everything the same, but can you see there at the front of the lead, I haven't got a hinge, I've got an anti-tangle sleeve that pushes everything out straight. This is Ali's preferred way of fishing it. He thinks it's better for anti-tangle. Personally, I like the hinge system, but he likes the fact that that anti-tangle sleeve throws everything out. And having that sinker in the middle of the hook link obviously helps to do that. But like me, he wants the hook link out perfectly straight. So when the fish picks it up, it's in contact with that lead straight away. And that is the beauty of this system. You're picking up the whole lead immediately. and I'm absolutely convinced that this catches me more fish than a normal lead clip setup. You might be thinking, well, why didn't I use it at Carp? Well, I did the first night, had 5 fish on a normal lead clip system. It suited the ready tied rigs that I was using as well, so I just carried on using it. But if the fishing is tough, this is my #1 choice. And obviously this works perfectly when you're dropping it out of a boat as well. And the leads go right up to 8 ounces on this type of system. So you can fish a long distance, up against snags, fish a really tight line when it's really, really windy, and the fish is picking the whole thing up from the heaviest point, and it turns straight into a normal lead clip, so it will dump the lead when you need it to. So that is my preferred system for fishing over boilies. We'll just finish off with the hook bait. We teased you at Carp, and I'm not going to tell you what this one is. All I'll say, it's peaches and cream. So you'll have to work out what flavour combination I've put in there. But basically, high attract hook baits at the start of the week, and then going over to probably matching the hatch at the end of the week. So that's a hybrid Korda slow sinker. When the fish have eaten loads and loads of bait, I'll swap over from the higher tracks to the matching ones, and hopefully we'll be snaring a big one. Yeah. As you can see, it's a very strong westerly wind at the moment. It's been up to gale full southwesterly, which is coming right across me, and I knew that was going to happen looking at the weather, so I've chosen to fish with a tapered subline. So I've got 033s, the main length of subline, going up to an 050 thick section at either end of the spool. That enables you to reverse it if you do get cut off. The 033 absolutely sails out. It's not a long way for me, 112 yards, but I want to do it with pinpoint accuracy. I'm using a cog lead as well, which doesn't cast as well as a normal lead clip. It's probably more like casting an inline. And I just want to make sure that I'm dropping it bang on the money, irrespective of the wind. 033 breaks at about 14 pounds in a straight pull, and obviously the 050 breaks at about 40 pounds. But the good bit about it is the diameter. It gives you such abrasion resistance in that last 15 metres and makes the casting that much easier as well. And the rod is the faithful 12 foot 3 3/4 Bezier. You can see there's a fantastic battle curve in it. This is my preferred rod for sort of multi-range fishing. If I know I'm going to be fishing a long way out, 120, 130, 140, 150, then I'll swap over to the 13 foot Bezier in 3 3/4. I've got them with me, but I just don't need them. The range I'm fishing at is more than comfortable with these rods. And my advice is, if you're doing lots and lots of long range fishing, get the 13 footers, either the Beziers or the Infinities. They definitely cast further than the 12s. And a certain Mr. Darryl Peck's been doing 160, 170 yards with them, and he reckons he can get further with the Beziers than he can with the Infinities. More expensive, but they're slimmer, crisper, faster recovery, and just an all-round nicer rod to use. The Infinities are still fantastic, but with these new carbons, it's just making the Beziers just that little bit better. So I'm going to shut up now, concentrate on this fish, see if we can get him in the net. He's nailed on that IQD rig, I can see it in his chops. Gotcha! Wicked. What lovely condition this fella's in. A proper chunky one, solid as a rock, 33 pounds on the button, and another one tamed on my new favourites, the Beziers.
When you're fishing big waters in Europe, anywhere like Gigantica or some of the expanses that you're likely to come across, it's important to have the right hardware, because you could be fishing 20 yards out on here, or you could be fishing 120 yards out. And I want to be able to fish there accurately and with ease. You know, I want to make sure the leads are landing there every time. The last thing you want to be doing is having repeated casts to get somewhere. And my choice of hardware is simple. It's an Infinity DF 13 foot 3 3/4. Now that might sound like a broomstick to you, but I promise you it isn't. The other myth that people tend to attribute to a 13-foot rod is that smaller people can't compress them. Now I'm 5'5", and I promise you it's made casting a long way very easy. I don't know what it is, it's the increased casting arc, but that extra foot really does make a difference. My casting style is quite simple. I take a big step forward, I have my arms straight, and right arms are locked up there, everything parallel to the floor, then a big step forward, and as I do that, pull hard with the left hand whilst keeping the right arm straight, and I tell you what, these propel leads out very quickly and very easily. Now, to complement that, you've got to have the right reel. There's no point having a real powerful rod and then having a tiny little spooled reel on there, because the coils of line coming off won't be right, and there just won't be the flow of line to match the acceleration of the lead. I use a Bezier QDX, and I've used them for a few years now, and the length of spool complements the line and the 50mm butt rings on the Infinity DFs beautifully. You know, it does make casting really easy. And onto the line itself, I'm using the tapered subline. Now there's two reasons for that. One is I want the lower diameter of the 12 pound to get me out there in the first place, but because I'm using the choddy on the line and there's a lot of weed out there, I love the added security of having a shock leader on there that's all blended in. There's no knots, nothing for the weed to get caught around, but more importantly, that choddy on the line is sinking under the weight of that heavy leader beautifully, so it really does complement it very nicely. The other important aspect is, like I say, there's weed out there and I don't want them fish cutting through it. You've got to have the right tackle to match the situation. You know, a lot of people might sacrifice fish safety just to get a rig out there to where they see the fish, but for me it's all about having balance, and that's what the tapered subline gives me. And talking about using those choddies on the line, it's important to have a fair bit of slack, because if you imagine, if I had a tight line going all the way out to the lead, the likelihood is they'll be lifted off the bottom and not fishing how I want them. So I've got to have a bit of a belly in the line, so it's going out to there nicely, allowing probably the last 30 to 40 yards towards the lead to be all sunk down, and then gradually coming up from the depths of Gigantica to the rod tip. You know, I don't want it all bedded down because there's a lot of weed between me and the rig, so I want a fair bit of line off it. If you have a look from the rod tips, you'll notice there's just a nice drop in the line, and that's just about perfect. So there's my hardware for big fish waters. If you're not using a boat to get your rigs out and you need to cast, then the Infinity DF 13 foot 3 3/4 is the one for me. Well, how about this? The camera crew, I might call this the cameraman fish, because they just left the site. I'd recast 2 of my rods back on the spot after baiting up this afternoon. It'd been dead for me for 48 hours, but this one has come at just the right time really, proper giving me a lift. Right out of the blue, just recast the rod probably 30-40 minutes ago, and it ramped off. Same hook bait, that caramelly, garlicky, peachy number that I had out there, but I'm absolutely made up. 39 pounds, 15 ounces, how about that? That's pretty close, wasn't it? But it doesn't matter when they look like this. Awesome, what a way to go into the night.
So that's another load of bait in the swim, hopefully to draw the fish back in so I can get a few more bites. Baiting up with a boat is an art form. It does take a little bit of practice, and I'd recommend you start doing it on somewhere like this that's not an inland sea. I've been out in the boat on 12,000 acres before, and it's pretty hairy, I can tell you. So for a lake like this where I'm actually casting out to mark my spot, I've got a DF marker rod, and I've got a Bezier reel loaded with floating braid that absolutely sails out there. And you remember at the start of the session I used just a lead to feel what was out there, got happy with my spot, and I used the marker float to give me a point of reference when I'm out there. So basically I've unlooped the lead and then replaced it with the marker float system, and then that's clipped up at exactly the same range as I'm fishing. And if I lose my mark, I've put a little tiny bit of marker elastic on there that lines up with the butt ring of the rod, and then I put the line under the clip and I know it's the same distance. And if I want to check it during the session, just in case that little bit of marker elastic has moved, all I do is go around my Signet distance sticks, in this case it's 28 times, and clip it up again. That's one of the beauties of having those sticks. You can never lose your mark. You can always check and make sure it's going out in the same position, because if you cast the float out, bait up, and then wind it in without marking the line, what tends to happen is the float creeps towards you each time you do it. And over a few days you can find that you're maybe a rod length closer to you than you were when you started the session. So it's really important to either go around the sticks or use the marker elastic. So the float's out there, popped up to the surface. That's really sort of in the centre of my spot if I can. If I've got rods out, then I tend to cast it in between two rods so that I don't pick up one of the rods. And obviously then I've got somebody in the swim minding the rods while I go out and bait up. But if you haven't got somebody there, then I recommend you wind all the rods in first, bait up with the boat, and then cast out afterwards. And boat safety, absolutely paramount importance. At Gigantica here, it's one of the rules. If they catch you out in a boat without a life jacket on that's properly done up, you're off straight away. And I completely agree with that. You don't hear about it much, but European anglers die every year through falling out of boats. They've got far too many clothes on. Some have got waders on, which drags you down as well. They haven't got a life jacket on. They're over the side, sometimes at night, and that's the end of them. At the end of the day, your life is the most important thing. So a decent life jacket that is done up. If it's not done up, it will just come straight off you when you go in the water. You might hit your head on the way in. That's the end of you. So I've measured bait out in advance. Here we're using the hybrid boilie because it gets fed on Gigantica all the time. It's a fantastic boilie that I've used all around the world. I caught really well on it in South Africa earlier on in the year. I've caught brilliantly on it in the UK as well, and the fish absolutely love it here. That's laced with hemp oil, so the mainline hemp oil all over the top 24 hours before. That soaks in, gives me a lovely slick on the surface when the fish start eating it. And how much you put in is absolutely key. On that particular run, I only put 2 kilos out. 24 hours has gone by, I've not had a bite, I've had a few little indications, I've seen fish showing, which suggests the fish have been in there eating it, but I haven't caught anything. If I'd had 2 or 3 bites a day, I'd probably put 4 kilos out. Because I've not caught anything, a couple of kilos and just a few tiger nuts over the top is just enough to refresh the area. And if they're not eating the boilies, hopefully they'll be eating the tigers. And how you spread it is really important as well. You see a lot of people when they're baiting up with a boat, it all goes in one spot, you know, and there's a rod over there with no bait around it at all. And you'll see me really spreading it. So I've got a scoop and I'm spreading it the whole width of my swim. So it's wider than where I'm actually fishing my rods, probably 5 or 6 foot wider. It's behind and not in front. So I've got no fish feeding over my line. It's all level with the float and behind it. And you'll see as well that I'll throw some out a lot further past the float. And what I'm trying to do is draw fish in from the middle of the lake. So I'll put a line at the back. Hopefully any fish moving about the back of my area, oh, there's a bait, there's a bait, there's a bait, draws them up into the area. They get confidence eating more and more bait, get to your rig before they get to your line, and bang, you've got them. And also the time of day that you bait up is absolutely key. Yesterday I left it far too late. I baited up just as Ali caught one. So obviously the fish were feeding and I went out there in the boat and baited up probably right on top of them. So today I've done it quite a bit earlier in the day, let the swim settle. I'm going to go and have the lovely barbecue that they do at Gigantica here, let the swim rest for a couple of hours, 3 casts back out against the clip and I'm fishing again. And the cardinal sin is don't go out in the boat at first light. Don't wind all your rods in and recast. Don't go out in the boat and bait up over the top of feeding fish. Let the morning feeding spell subside, wait until it all goes quiet and then do it. And then hopefully you won't scare away the fish that are already out there, because that is the time to get a bite on any lake. So that is baiting up with a boat. Think about how much you're putting in, think about when to put it in, and most of all, be safe. Well, they all went out perfectly, all within the kill zone. There's plenty of bait out there at the moment, and it is Big Fish Thursday. Historically, this lake has done lots of big fish on Thursday night, And to make it even better, it's full moon tonight and the lake fishes really well on a full moon. There's definitely something in it. I don't know what it is, but the pull of the moon does affect the fish's movements. And they reckon that moon rise halfway through and moon set at the peak times. And it's about to be moon rise in 38 minutes. So you never know, I might get one before it gets dark. But if I don't, hopefully the moon man will shine on me and we'll have a big one to show you in the morning. Well, we promised you a carp and the moon man has provided us with a carp. And what a stunner it is. A fish called Wodka at 39 pounds. Not a massive fish for Gigantica, but in general terms a very, very big carp. And he came just on first light this morning on the right hand rod on the Match the Hatch hook bait, a hybrid slow sinker. So I'm changing all the rods to that and we'll see what today brings. You will see throughout this fishing film and a lot of the stuff that we do on television that the members of Team Korda will be donning new fishing outfits. Korda have now moved into fishing clothing. We started off with t-shirts, did a few designs last year, they were extremely popular and we've kept one of those in the range the whole time. That's the Carp and Bubbles one that runs down the side of the t-shirt. And then we've got new ones like this one, so you've got a nice motif of a carp there that's done in like a tattoo style and you've got other bits down the back of it and it basically says searching for the monster mirror. And that's all written in ancient Chinese writing. And then it will change to common and leather as well as the range expands. It comes in various different colours and various different sizes as well. The t-shirts from small right up to 3XL. So there's something for the long shanks and also the wide gapes. We're moving into trousers as well. These are the lightweight, quick dry rip stops. So these have got mosquito repellent in them as well. Obviously if you get them wet when you're holding a fish, they dry out really, really quickly. It's really nice features on these and they're shaped the same as your legs. So you can move around in them, crouch down by your rods and they don't tighten up like a lot of the combats that you buy. And there's also a lined version of these. You'll see some of the guys wearing the lined versions. They've got fleece on the inside. They feel absolutely delightful. They're going to be really warm in the winter. And again, they're the same shape. So you don't feel like the Michelin man when you're walking around in them. There's going to be hoodies as well. We've got new caps in the range as well. And there's more and more stuff coming all the time. So keep an eye out in your local tackle shop for the new bits that are coming from Korda. I pay a lot of attention to line lay and line camouflage and I try and get as much of it on the bottom as humanly possible. And you'll see in previous films I would have been using fluorocarbon in this swim. It would have been drooped down off the rod tip. There'd be no weight on the bobbins and the line would be on the bottom all the way out to where I'm fishing. The lake has changed, so I'm going to have to change my fishing style. So what I've basically done is gone from fluorocarbon to the tapered subline. That doesn't sink quite so fast. But the most important thing is it's fished much tighter than I would normally fish. And the reason for that is there's great big banks of weed coming up off the bottom. There's no point having the line running along the bottom, over the weed and back down the other side. You basically want it tight through mid-water, touching the top of the weed and then hopefully dropping down onto your feeding area so the fish don't come into contact with the line. And the way I've done that, whack out to the spot, hit the clip and feel it down. If I cast it slightly right or left of where I want it, because of the depth of water, I can go in the opposite direction, plunge the tip under the water, and I'm sinking the line and also dragging the rig more on target as I do it. So if I cast too far right, I'll run over to the left of the swim, plunge the rod in, and it will drag the rig slightly left, and hopefully it'll end up on the mark. And then I'll carefully sink the rest of the line by holding it in the tips of my fingers. You can easily over tighten it and pull the lead out of position, and in this case maybe pull it into a bit of weed. So you've got to be so careful, get it all under the surface film, and then I'll put it on the rest and tighten it up, and basically the bobbin will be sitting right at the top and you'll see the line creep round, creep round, creep round, so it's still through mid-water and it eventually be pointing directly at where the lead is hit the bottom. Then I'll take the bobbin off, slacken off and let that subline sink a little bit. And what I want, you've got a heavy bit at the end because that's where the thick leader element is. That will sink first and you just pay more off, and hopefully you get a nice sort of shallow sort of curve. So it's along the bottom and then just coming up into the weed and then back up to the rod tip. And then the bobbin goes on, and you can notice here I've got the stows on with the smallest weight added to it, so there's just a little bit more tension on the line. We've had some real savage crosswinds during this session, and that extra bit of weight just stops the delkims going off when they shouldn't. And the buzzers, my old faithful TXI Delkims, take these absolutely everywhere. I've got them on at the head and also on at the bivvy, so I've got a cordless remote system. So if I'm asleep at night, I'm straight out and onto the rod. And these are set up on plus, which basically means it takes less vibration to set them off, makes them even more sensitive. And I've got the sensitivity wound up to number 6, so as sensitive as they go. And as you can see, got a little bit of a crosswind. They're not going off at the moment. It's been absolutely hacking across here, and I've been getting no false bleeps at all. So let's imitate a bite on +6. That's it. That's as much as it goes. That's screwed up tight, that reel. If I really pulled, a little bit of line would come off. But can you see, as I'm holding it, the Delkim's still going off. And that's the vibration system. If you use a roller buzzer, that wouldn't happen. As soon as the line stopped rolling forwards, you wouldn't get any bleeps. But with Delkims, you carry on getting bleeps, and then bang, I'm straight out to the rod, wind down, and I'm into it. And if the wind dies down completely, I'd probably take the extra weight off the bobbins just to make the whole thing a little bit more sensitive. I like to fish a semi-slack line if I can. Obviously the weed stops me doing that completely, but if I can get it all draped down, I just feel happier that the fish can come into the swim and feed without touching the line. Everyone loads their Barrow differently. I'm using the Mark 4S, which is a real big Barrow. It's got a wheel that takes the shock out of it as you're going along and takes loads of kit. Now, first of all, I put my camera bag and everything in that pannion in there, just unzip that. All my waterproof clothing and stuff goes in there. My camera tripod, a little rake I've got, all the sort of stuff where I'm not going to go to very often, that goes in there first. And then my bed chair goes on legs at either end like that. That slots perfectly into that position, and then I basically build everything up on top of my bed chair. So I've got my cooking bag with all my food and everything goes on there, and then 4 of those tracker buckets fit perfectly next to that, and that covers up the top part of the bed chair. And then on the back of the Barrow across here, I'll put my bed chair buddy, and then my unhooking mat goes on top of that, and I might throw a pair of boots and all that sort of thing in that little gap as well. I don't tend to use the stand that comes with it that your rods go on, because a lot of the time I've got 2 rod bags. I've got one with my marker rod and everything in it, and I've got my fishing rod one as well. And then my bivvy goes down the centre. So once it's fully loaded like that, I'll just check that it's nice and balanced. Water bottle goes right on the front. That gives it a little bit of extra weight over the wheel, and that's what makes these carp portals so good. All the weight is going over the wheel, so you're not lifting everything, it's basically balanced. So once it's all gone on, I've got a couple of guy ropes. The bungees go over the top like that. They're made for the job over the top of it. You could put a cover over the top of it as well. They do supply those, but I prefer to just get to me swim and then get it all unloaded. So that's that one. Daryl uses a completely different one to me. He uses the Mark II puncture proof. It's a smaller Barrow, and the puncture proof wheel is much thinner, so it cuts through the grass better. It's a little bit more unstable in the mud, but it does push along a lot easier. Now he loads his differently to me as well. He's still got the pannion in there, and all his bank sticks, buzzer bars, his pegs, all that sort of stuff goes into that. And then on top of that, his bed chair goes on, but it goes on the other way round, so the legs are on the outside. He doesn't use these side bits on here. That reduces the weight as well, and basically his bed chair forms the space that all his kit goes on. He's got a big tracker Barrow bag, that goes on the front, and then a bivvy goes down the side of that, and then he's got his cooking bit at the back and his unhooking mat in the remaining space. So basically he builds it up just like I do, but in a different configuration. And then on top of that, both his rods go on the top of there, straps go over, and he's off. And Daryl's known for fishing off his Barrow. So basically, if he's chasing the fish around, he'll keep all his available stuff in that pannion, and then he'll just go round to a swim, won't set anything up, a couple of rods out, maybe get a bite, the fish have moved off somewhere else, round again on the Barrow again. And he said the more loaded someone's Barrow, the more I like it, because I can move around really quickly and get on the fish before the guys have even thought about packing up. Now, I've been quoted in the press of saying this is probably the best bit of tackle that's come out in the last 20 years, and I stand by that, because the amount of gear that you can put on one of these means that you can go to the swim in one go, you can move easily. How we used to carry it, I just will never know. Those are the Barrows from Carp Porter. I wouldn't go fishing without one. Get in the net, get in the net. Yes! Have I got him? Have I got him? Yes! Get in! Come on! Well, how about that? I thought that was a bream, and it's not. It's a great big mirror carp, and it looks like one that hasn't been out for quite a while. That was proper hairy out there. Big old weed bed he was in. I really thought it was just going to be a bream popping up to the top, and it was a great big carp. Thank God I took the unhooking mat out with me. Right, let's get him in the sling, get him back in the water. And that was the problem. If you can see there, the light, look at all that weed. That's what the fish had got in. It was hairy, but we got him. Okay, zero the scales first of all. Slide him in. There we go. Okay, fins are all flat, tail's okay. Straight on the mat. If I lift him out, do you want to take the thing out of the way?
£60, isn't it?
I don't think so, no.
No?
No. It's definitely the twin though.
Yeah.
It's very flat along there.
It's definitely a monster.
Definitely a monster though, mate.
Here we go.
Just think about your bonus next year, yeah, when you read it out.
Mate, I thought you've been in practice.
Come on,
I thought you were in practice.
come on.
60.
Yeah?
60. Hang on, man. 62 and a half, I'd say.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Get in! Yes!
How's that for
See,
your
brother?
bonus?
Oh, get in! Well, we promised you a monster from Gigantica, and here it is, 62.5 pounds, a fish called the twin, one I dearly wanted to catch. And what a way to end our masterclass. Just want to say thank you so much to all the lakes that have let us film there, and thank you to all the fantastic anglers that have shared all their secrets to help you catch monsters like this. Get in.